Quiet, let's call the meeting to order. Please rise for the...
A quorum.
Oh, let's do it. We have a quorum, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, we have a quorum.
Now let's rise for that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item this evening is approval of the agenda, and we will strike or remove item 9A. We do not need to change the date of the workshop meeting, so 9A is stricken. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Community comment. Any community members wishing to comment? Okay, please come forward. Reminder, this is an opportunity for citizens to address the board. You should identify the subject and agenda item to which your comments pertain. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. Personal attacks or accusations, as well as derogatory remarks against any individual, are not allowed. Appropriate ways to address personnel issues are through administration, and not handled with satisfaction then in writing to the board. These measures are in place to protect citizens against claims of libelous or slanderous statements and to protect staff and students of their statutory rights of privacy. Welcome.
Thank you.
Sorry to say that to you.
I appreciate
Not the
it.
welcome.
Some clarification. My name is Gina Yetzer, and I'm here tonight as a parent, a substitute teacher, and a taxpayer. I have a big concern about what's going on at our middle school. And this is not an attack. This isn't pointing fingers. This is, we have a problem in our school, and it needs to be addressed. The troubles range from discipline, education, respect or lack thereof, lack of space, lack of student services, poor time management, and issues with technology. I don't have the answers to all of these problems. I don't know the ins and outs fully of the school district, the board, the administration, but I do know there are problems. And one issue that I thought I could at least shine some light on was the iPads that the students have and the technology that we have brought to our schools, which are now causing troubles. And my point tonight is just to share my concern, bring light to this concern, and hopefully a call to action to the board to realize that there is a trouble. The iPads in the middle school are very disruptive to the students, to the faculty, to the staff, and I'm talking janitorial, food service. The problem is the students are on these iPads 24/7. It's great technology. It provides wonderful opportunities for the kids and for the teachers. It's not being utilized, and therefore it is a disruption. I have substituted as a para, and I have substituted as a teacher. I have been in the school as a parent, and those kids are on those iPads 24/7. The kids are smart. They know how to hide their use. They know how to sneak their use. They know how to put it in their lap so the teachers can't see it. They know how to dim their screen. They know how to search the right web page that can go down real quick and go switch right over to what the teacher is presenting. It is a complete distraction all day long. Not to mention a hindrance in their communication to each other. They're students. They are at an awkward age. They are changing physically, emotionally, mentally. There's a million things going on, and we have given them the opportunity to completely disengage from their peers, from their teachers, from anybody who's interacting in that school. It is a problem. And I think having the iPads in the schools is wonderful if they can stay in a classroom. They don't need to go class to class with a student. They don't necessarily need to go home with a student because rarely are they given assignments where they have to be on an iPad at home. They don't type reports. They don't know how to type. They don't do assignments on an iPad because, well, they could do that assignment from a book, paper and pencil at home. The iPads are very rarely used from the students in an educational purpose outside of the school. So why do they need that iPad in their hand 24/7? This is a very big concern of mine. It also leads to financial means. If we weren't using those dollars to each year get a new class, their own iPad, could we use that for smart boards? So the teachers could have access to smart boards and be able to do a lesson through the smart board. Could we use that money to add non-traditional seating to the middle school? The elementary schools are incorporating non-traditional seating, so high tops or balls or different things so that kids who have a little trouble sitting still have the opportunity to still engage in class with a different seating. Could we use that money to do that? Could we use that money to add additional social workers or psychologists? I just don't feel it is a pertinent way to spend our money and for our students to spend our time. I think technology is wonderful, but this is not the way to do it with our kids, especially in the middle school.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kim Clausen. I have 2 kids in the Faribault Public School System, a son in 1st grade at Lincoln and a daughter in 7th grade at the middle school. I'm here as a concerned parent about the current environment in our schools, particularly the middle school. Now, my children are not angels, and I understand that hormones and brain development of adolescents causes them to be inherently more challenging than other students. However, things seem to be at a tipping point with the bullying, fights, and disrespectful behavior shown by students towards staff, teachers, and other students at the middle school. This is not a personal attack on a principal or any other staff member. I know there are amazing teachers at all the schools, and they are absolutely doing the best that they can with the resources that they have. I've always defended the public school system and told others that their kids' success will depend on their parental involvement. However, for the first time, I'm considering removing my kids from the public school system. I don't have any magic solutions to these issues. However, maybe some things that we could start to look at are the block schedules, the iPad program, and stricter regulations on the use of personal electronics in class. Last quarter, my daughter was in robotics. Kids were divided up into teams to do projects. My daughter regularly was the only one in her team completing the projects because the other students were always on their devices. In fact, one was always on her personal device playing online games with her mother. This was never addressed and never rectified throughout the whole quarter. And while I understand that a slim majority of respondents were in favor of iPads after the recent survey, the response rate among parents, at least, was only 10 to 13% of the middle school and high school parents. And I would argue that a biased non-response rate of 87 to 90% is meaningful in this survey. Studies show that too much screen time can negatively affect kids' development and their attention span, their ability to learn. And so I would echo the comments that were made by Ms. Yetzer earlier. My daughter's experience with the block schedules is that they aren't doing what they were intended to do. She states that subjects are not explored in any greater depth than they are during the regular class periods, and it basically ends up being an extended study hall. So again, I don't have any magic solutions. But we need to start to do something to try and address these issues.
Thank you. Our next item is the Jefferson 3rd grade students' persuasive speeches.
Yep, and I think I'll have Ms. Sabatka come up and introduce her students. and then make sure the students speak loud and clear right into that mic. So thanks.
First off, I want to thank you guys for allowing us to come. Again, this year the kids are really excited. We've been working on persuasive letters. Probably took a month or so, but we got them down and they're really good this year. I've been working with Becca Ludzak. She's our EL teacher. Oh, she went. She was here. But yeah, we're really excited. My first student is going to be Olivia.
Dear School Board, I think we should get flexible seating so kids can pay more attention on the teacher. This is a good idea, isn't it? I did a lot of research and studies say that kids pay more attention to the teacher when they have a little bit of movement. For example, the seats would feel really good to sit in. The kids would stay in their seats instead of wandering around. Everyone will want to have flexible seating so they will not whine that their bottom is hurting and that they will keep asking if they can sit somewhere else. So then they will not pay more attention on the teacher and keep complaining, so they won't talk or complain. They will like the seat, be happy and be excited. Then we're going to do better at working at our academics, and the school will be a better place. Besides, I really love soft seats like beanbags, chairs, and so on. Thank you for listening. Sincerely, Olivia.
My next student is Claire.
Dear School Board, I would appreciate it if you could give 3rd through 5th grade one-to-one iPads. My reasons are we would not have to share iPads during IXL. We would not have to take iPads from other classes during tests. We also have sickness going around at school, and we don't want to get sick. There are germs on iPads. We won't get sick if we have our own iPads. We would be more responsible if we have our own iPads by taking the iPads home at night, and we would not forget them at home. We will not forget the password either. I would like one-to-one iPads for these reasons. Thank you for considering. Sincerely, Claire.
My next student is Whitney.
Dear School Board, I have something to say to you. You should have lockers in our school by our classrooms. Kids are losing things like hats and gloves. They are dropping things on the floor. It is very bad. Clothes are getting into lost and found because we're on the other side of the school. Isn't this a good idea? Head lice is going around too. This is really bad because it can spread easily. Lockers will stop lice from spreading. I think lockers are neat, and it will help us stay healthy and more organized. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Whitney.
My next student is Tatum.
Dear School Board, I think we should have one-to-one iPads because we have a lot of sick people in our class. And if we get one-to-one iPads, I won't get sick so much. If we get one-to-one iPads, I could get a lot of my homework done a lot easier. We would get one-to-one iPads. We would not have games like my brother Tanner. My class will promise that we will be responsible and respectful with our iPads. We would be good students with their iPads, and we will be careful with them too. If we use other people's iPads, we will share germs. I will feel cool like my brothers if I have my own iPad. I could get my homework done a lot easier too, and we could go on Schoology and talk to our cool teachers. Thank you for considering. Sincerely, Taylor.
My last student is Thomas.
Dear School Board, I think a pizza toppings bar would be a great idea for school lunch because people like different toppings on their pizza. One reason why is because some people like different toppings on their pizza. People would be happier because they have more than 2 choices. People would pick pizza more often so the school would get more money. Pizza would taste better with different toppings. So in result, people would have school lunch instead of home lunch. I think pizza toppings would be a great idea for school lunch. Thank you for considering. Sincerely, Thomas.
Is that all of them?
That's all of them.
Oh, well, thank you very much, and thank you guys very much for your presentations to the school board.
Our next item is item 5, the consent agenda. These items are approved by one motion unless a board member requests separate action. Tonight, the consent agenda includes minutes of last meeting, February 26th, employment, additional assignments, authorization of payments, transfers, and investment accounts, committee minutes from various committees. At this time, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any further? Well, no, we don't discuss. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried, 7-0. Retirements. At this time, we will consider, is there a motion to approve the retirement of Robert Remford?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? I think Mr. Remford was my son's favorite teacher. And I worked with him too at the middle school, and he's had a long and distinguished career in this district.
I'd like to second that. I had an opportunity to work with Mr. Remford over a number of years, and it was very interesting to see his approach. It was very collaborative and so on, so he will be missed.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried, 7-0. Next item is 7A1. It's an action item, Special Education Paraprofessional Edition at Faribault Middle School. Is there a motion to consider?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item 7A2, this is the Roosevelt parking improvements. Is there a motion to consider?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, yes. I'll be voting no on this, but I'd like to at least explain why. I've discussed it in the various committees I belong to or part of, that instead of spending about $345,000, we should put that on hold and then investigate cleaning the air of our schools. And I've checked with some mechanical engineers, and the last one was today at Wold Architects about cleaning the air. It is possible. The reason for that is in my former career as a construction administrator at University of Minnesota Medical Division, of course, they had clean air. They had to because working patients and labs. So I would encourage the board to postpone this and spend the money, or at least investigate cleaning the air. A couple methods is ultraviolet sterilization, and there's other methods. It will kill the bacteria and viruses in the air and on their surfaces. And it will help our students and staff. So the technology is there, and I think that we should hold off parking lot improvements. I don't think right now it should be a priority in our district. I think we should investigate this and just exactly, the cost of it can be done to our 7 buildings.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carries 6-1. Mr. Olson voting no. Item 7A3, contract with Mr. Stephen Kahn, Phoenix School Consulting. Is there a motion to consider this?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried, 7-0. Item 7A4, Apple Care custom proposal, and a bunch of other things with the Apple. Maria, are you going to come and help us with this? First of all, is there a motion to consider this item? And we will do, excuse me. No, it is just one item here. Okay, is there a motion to consider? Did we do that?
No, not yet.
I'll make a motion to consider this.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Oops, not yet. Discussion. Maria, help me out here.
So what this is to renew our current Apple devices for staff and students, and this would be replacing currently what we have now. And so every staff in our district has an iPad. Our students in grades 6 through 12 have an iPad, and then we have classroom sets at our elementary between 5 and 7 per classroom. So the 2,900 iPads would replace those devices. The first part of the contract was the Apple Care. This year we're looking at purchasing Apple Care for our devices to extend the life of the devices and help with the repair costs. And this is a 3-year lease agreement.
And what do you do with the old one? I mean, is it like a trade-in, or what, do we sell them back? In other words, it helps with the cost of a new one, or not?
Right now, I'll just get some bids to sell the old ones to companies that purchase used iPads. So we just accept the best bid. We will resell those old iPads, probably keep a few, but resell most of them.
Okay, what price, I mean, what do we pay new?
This first batch, we paid about $474 for the devices. Now the prices come down to $284, and we probably can get anywhere from $120 to $160 for our current devices, depending on the condition.
Okay, so they'll bid on that, and high bid
gets them.
Gets it and stuff. Okay. So it really cuts down the price of an iPad when they're really coming down, and so.
Competition.
Yeah, that's about, because that's really in 3 years from what, 475 to whatever you.
284, and actually they've improved a bit. The iPad device itself the functionality has improved, and then these are 32 gig, which is standard. The current ones we have now are 16 gig. So there's a lot more space on them.
So, Mr. Chair, obviously this is on our agenda, and I approved it I voted for it at the finance meeting, and I'll vote for it here tonight. But I do think it leads into a larger discussion at some point, obviously, and not in year 3 of this renewal, exactly what the two ladies, our guest speakers, came in and talked about. And obviously, there is no perfect plan in place, and we've refined it from where we started 3 years ago, and we'll continue to refine it and stuff like that. But I do think that needs to be a topic of discussion as we move forward. So.
Yeah, I would agree in view of the well thought out and well-intentioned comments that we heard from our parents, and we're not going to debate and get into that now, but I think we just need to be able to assure our community that we do monitor these things as closely as we can. K-12, we heard our Jefferson students talk about how they need more iPads, so it's not an easy issue, but we need to be thoughtful and purposeful in the use of this, and I certainly will support this item. Any further discussion?
Yeah, one quick question, Maria. How flexible is the number in this contract? So this is for 2910. If we need a few more, is that negotiated at this price? If we end up not needing that many, is that flexible in any way, or is this for 2910 and then we add or subtract from there?
We can add or subtract as we need to. Yeah, right now that's the current price. It's on a timing issue too. We're getting this price too because of the timing of our order. the later that you wait, the higher the price is, just because of the timing of it too.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor of this item, the Apple iPad proposal, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Next item is 7B-1, a resolution accepting gifts and donations. And this month we are asking approval of following gifts from the Community Co-op Association, $500 for the robotics program. Is there a motion to consider this?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, and this is a resolution, so I will call on our clerk to call the roll.
Yvette.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Chad.
Aye.
Andrea.
Aye.
Myself, aye. John.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, it passes 7-0.
Thank you. Next item, reports, Maria.
I just have a couple technology reports. Last month we rolled out our new internet web filter, and our internet web filter blocks inappropriate sites and malware on our network. And with our new filter, it gives us advanced reporting procedures, and we're able to customize and add advanced layers of security to it. So we're better able to monitor online traffic and ensure that we're in SIPA compliance. And it helps us to mitigate any potential threats on our network. So it just gives us a stronger reporter and a stronger internet filter. And then this summer, we're looking at a website refresh. With our current contract with School Messenger, we're entitled to a free refresh of our site. So we're looking at giving it a little bit of a facelift, maybe changing a little bit of the navigation, customization of it, and taking advantage of some new features and enhancements. We're wrapping up our E-rate application. We're looking at using the funds next year to replace our wireless controllers. These controllers control our access points in our network, and they're coming to the end of life next year, so this is kind of good timing for us to reuse those E-rate funds to replace those controllers. We're looking at our summer projects and doing some project planning there, and then our next District Technology Committee meeting is Tuesday, April 3rd, next week. Any questions?
On these devices, can you get on Facebook on this?
Not on the student devices,
okay.
No. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I believe Rob is next with special education.
Hoping this graph comes up, but if it doesn't, I made paper copies just to be sure. Yeah. Oh, you have a paper copy. So what I wanted to talk about today is the graduation rates for special education students in Faribault Public Schools. Because about 2 weeks ago, the Department of Education gave out a press release talking about how the graduation rates in Minnesota have gone up the past few years. I thought this might be a timely time to talk to you guys about how they've fared, at least the special education graduation rates fared in Faribault. So the chart in front of you displays two graduation rates. On the left side is the 4-year graduation rate, and on the right side is the 7-year graduation rate. The state looks at just the 4-year graduation rate at this time, but as a special education director who knows that some students aren't able to graduate within 4 years of high school, and because of their disabilities, they move on to a transition program or need some extra academic support for an additional year. I believe the 7-year rate captures those students who are, because of their disability, in school until age 21. And so I think it's important when you look at the 4-year rate, you also look at the 7-year rate and at least be aware. Overall, both our 4-year and our 7-year rates are below the state average. The state average is the black line, and I left the numbers on for their graduation rate for special education students. So this is not the overall rate that they published in their news release, but this is the rate that special education students in the state of Minnesota are graduating. And then our graduation rate is the green bar below the black line. And I also left the numbers on the green bar. The red bars are the students who are either dropped out or unknown, and the yellow bar is the continuing. And you'll notice at 4-year we have a number of students continuing, and 7-year we no longer do because typically our obligation to educate ends at age 21. I do want you to keep some things in mind when you look at this. First of all, Faribault has a fairly small pool of students, about 40 to 50 students end their 4-year. We have about 40 to 50 seniors who have special education IEPs on any given year. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, but overall, that can mean a jump of 2 to 3 percentage points in any given year. So for example, our 7-year graduation rates was 69 in 2013. If we graduated one more student, we would be at the state level, most likely. So the percentages are a little bit wider gap than the actual numbers of kids that we're talking about because we're a smaller district. Another thing to keep in mind is that school is difficult for special education students. These are students who typically are identified with disabilities, on any number of disabilities, and whether it's behavior or academics or just task completion, it's difficult for students who have disabilities to go to school. And so therefore, consequently, it's difficult for them to graduate. Because our 4-year rate is below 67% in the special education subgroup, the Department of Education is offering support to our district to help raise this rate, which is a great thing. I'll attend with Colleen this Thursday, a meeting at the Department of Ed to kind of kick off that initiative. But I do think it's important to note that the state average is under 67%. So it would seem to me that a majority of the schools are going to be also offered support for helping with their graduation rates based on the department's guidelines. I'm not necessarily happy that we're below the state average in our 4-year rate, but I'm pleased that our 7-year rate seems to have kept pace with the 7-year rate of special ed kids across the state. Are there any questions about this? Yeah.
Yeah, Rob, so 2 questions. I mean, I guess first I would say I'm very pleased that it looks like our 7-year rate is right. You know, it's not quite the state average, but, you know, effectively it's right on the state average, and that shows we're in line there. The 4-year rate would, what the numbers would sort of suggest to me is that we're getting our students graduated, but we might be taking a little longer than typical, which is not the perfect world, but if the kids are graduating, in the big picture is that's a good thing. Yep. So I'm pleased to see that. My one question would be, these don't add up to 100 in each column. And so I'm wondering, what are the blank spaces there? Are those students who are leaving the system and therefore not part of the numbers? Why aren't they going up to 100 in each case?
That's it. Those are students that we don't know what happened to them. So those are typically students that have left the district their senior year and moved on to another district, and for one reason or another, we aren't able to track them. So they may have graduated in another district, they may have moved out of state, they may have any number of things, but we're not able to track them because we don't have that information.
Okay, thank you.
Rob, question for you. Is the level of severity at all measured in here?
Is the level of what?
You know, special education severity type of thing, and I don't know how to say that perfectly, but...
This is all the special education students. So this includes students who may have just speech and language services, which is what I would consider a minimal type of service, all the way up to the students who are very intensive in our resource rooms 100% of the time. So this includes all special education students, regardless of their level of disability.
Okay, any further questions?
How do the SEPSEC numbers come into this? Are they, maybe they haven't been seniors yet, I suppose.
Yeah, the STEP students are measured in our, the SEVs, that's a good question. I believe that they will get their own graduation rate, and so for the students we have there will get their own graduation rate, but the students we place in the transition program, in the STEP program, those are included in our rate. Those come back to us. So.
Okay, thank you, Rob.
I did also want to note, I saw in the agenda that it indicates that there's a SEVSEC board meeting tomorrow night. I believe that's been canceled.
We had it last week.
We had it last week. It's their spring break, and I just didn't want anyone to. I didn't want Yvette to show up and not have anybody there. But
thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Policy committee report. I don't know if anybody's going to report. Andrew was there. I was there. Todd was there.
Pretty, not really significant. We pulled the one that had any significant language change. Everything else was pretty much statute and clarification.
Yeah, I'll draw the board's attention to these policies are in your documents here, and virtually all of them were just an addition of a word or two as advised by the Minnesota School Board Association, bringing them in line. I will mention under discrimination, non-discrimination policies, it added the word gender to the categories that we cannot discriminate, nor should we. And interestingly enough, under chemical use and abuse, they spelled out cannabis or marijuana specifically, in addition to controlled substances or other things. So those are the two notable things that I thought as we look through 9 policies, one of which does not appear here, will come in the future. And again, this is just a report, and the board will have a chance to vote on these at our next meeting. We struck item 9A. Item 9B, consider approval of resolution 1821 establishing dates for the filing affidavits of candidacy. And is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
And I will just inform the public that the opening for school board elections for 4-year terms is on May 22nd, 2018, and it closes on June 5th, 2018. Is there any further discussion? This is a resolution, so Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yvette.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Chad.
Aye.
Andrea.
Aye.
Myself, aye. John.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, it passes 7-0.
Thank you. The next item is 9C, consider approval of contingent resolution relating to choosing nominees for election of the school board and calling the school district primary election. And this relates to the fact that if more than twice the number of available positions file, then we'll have the opportunity to have a primary election. Is there a motion to consider this?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me,
Resolution.
resolution, back up.
Okay. Yvette.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Chad.
Aye.
Andrea.
Aye.
Myself, aye. John.
Aye.
Jason.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, it passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 9D, and this is consider approval of an open enrollment survey. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
I'll second. Mr. Sesker, are you going to speak to this briefly?
Yeah, yep, and there are some attachments on there. And what this is, we have approximately 1,000 kids that leave the public school district and attend elsewhere. Some 600 or so. This does not count the private school because I don't know how many students are at Divine Mercy and BA. But they go to the charter schools that we have in our community, and another 400 open enroll outside of our community and outside of our school district. So we would like to get a handle on why these students are leaving. And this is a scientific questionnaire. We would hire Springstead to do this survey. They would survey, they'd try to get about 200 responses. There is no margin of error like there is in the other survey. They try to get as many responses as possible so that they can get a good feedback and a good feeling as to why these parents may be taking these kids out of our public school system.
Todd, do we have any input into any questions they would ask?
We do, yeah. And so we would ask Springstead to send us a list of questions. We would share them with you guys. And if you have some feedback and input, then we would add those additional questions into the survey so that those questions could be asked as well.
Do you know the size of the survey, or the size of the population they go after? What number?
Yep, well, they're going to try to go after 200.
200.
And they say if they can get 125 out of that 1,000 of the parents that they're trying to survey, they feel that it's been pretty successful. And they're currently doing it at a couple school districts, and with some pretty good success.
In Todd, you mentioned the number of 1,000 that attend charter schools, some in our district or some in our area and whatnot. But I think the net number that actually leave Faribault proper to go to other districts is 450-ish, right?
That's correct.
Do we get any balance or breakdown between those groups? I mean, so to get 125 parents that send their kids to STEM and Nurstrand, I'm not quite sure that would give us all the information that maybe I would hope we would attain versus getting some kids or some parents that send kids to Medford and some kids to Northfield and et cetera.
Right, and we can break that percentage down, and they would have the contact of those folks and who those people are. So they can narrow down actually that demographic to figure out what sort of percentage are in each one of those different areas and then survey them. And we can put more emphasis on just the open enrollments versus the kids who take advantage of some of our schools in our community.
Well, I know all this costs money, but we have a lot of kids leaving our district. We have a lot of kids leaving Faribault. And if we get 2 back in 1 year, it's paid for itself. Maybe actually even a net number type of thing. So I'll just throw that out there. I will move for, are you ready for a motion, Mr. Chair?
Did we have one?
Yep, you already have the motion in a second.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, my bad.
Well, I'll also echo the more information we have about this, the better off we'll be. So any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Consider approval of a communication plan. This is an action item. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Maria, looks like you're going to discuss with us. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I got fooled.
Right.
Todd?
Well, there are 3 components to this plan, and there are 2 software components, and then there's also the communication support piece. So the communication support piece, I'll go through that while Maria's contacting the people from Thought Exchange. The people from Thought Exchange are going to give a quick presentation because it's something that we haven't done before, and it's not unique to the school districts, but it'd be unique to our school district, and I think it would be good for you guys to hear what that is all about. The communication support would be an actual person. We have been in contact with Northfield. They're interested in also sharing a communication person with the district, and that's right. And so we would utilize this person to help with our PR. They would help with communicating positive things that have been happening in the district to our community. The cabinet has reviewed this over and over many times, and they feel that there is a need for a communication person, a communication expert, not just a superintendent that puts articles out in the newspaper, although we try to do the best. I try to talk positively about the district. We all love it here. But they feel that we need the next step, in order to do that, that would be a person who has a professional public relations person. The Guide K-12 piece, some of you have already seen that. Some of you have worked with it. Actually, Kiara, who was here earlier today with her daughter, was on our boundary team to look at the different areas where we could equalize the different pieces of the school district and then move the elementary boundaries. That guide K-12 is a data piece so that we can pull up demographics of the school district. One small example that we could use the guide K-12 with would be it now will show us where the newborns live, and then that would help Anne-Marie and her program go out and do some outreach for those folks to give them any services that they want, give them a positive message from the Faribault Public School District, and build some relationship at a very, very early age. Guide K-12 can also, we would use that software to do an assessment on our bond issue from last fall, and they need that data to do a cross comparison with the data that they have from the state of Minnesota. So that is valuable. If we ever go into a future bond issue, whether it's this fall or next spring or whenever that date comes, then Guide K-12 would also help us and tell us where some of those borders are. So all those things are pieces that we can use to outreach for our community to give us a better idea of who is out there and what the needs are from the community's perspective. Thought Exchange is actually the software that allows us to really get some of that feedback back without going with the survey. And before I explain that any further, I think I'll have is Kevin or
Kevin, are you there?
I am. I'm here. Good evening, everybody.
Hello. Good evening.
Go ahead, Kevin. Can you hear me, Kevin?
Yeah, I can hear you. Just a little in the background. Just let me know when you can hear me and when you're ready for me to start, and I'll just launch into it.
Yep, I think we're ready.
Okay. Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Skelcher. I'm the VP of Client Solutions here at Thought Exchange, and yeah, real pleasure to be here and spend a few minutes in your boardroom. So. The plan for today is just to give you a real brief overview, not more than 10 or 12 minutes, and then answer a few questions if any come up. And just to confirm on your end, you can see my purple Thought Exchange screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Excellent. So let's just start with a little bit of an overview of what we do, and so we're really looking at this idea of how you engage your stakeholders and how you make decisions through the power of conversation. And we use a blend of software and service to hear back from hear back from parents and staff and students as well. And one of the things that we're really focused on is as you make changes, changes around your organization, we would really like to support you in each area of that change. So how you bring people together to gather, what are the important interests you need to understand as you go through change, what are some of the strategies that can be taken on, how to get people involved in those conversations to implement change as well. We've been working in education for about 7 years, and we have hundreds of clients. And a few reasons about why they work with us is that our software and service is really efficient. So we're able to hear back from many more people than could come to a town hall or a meeting. The feedback that we gather is very actionable and allows leaders to understand where there's certain areas of tension or agreement or disagreement within a conversation. And that our hope is that by, asking people in a really open-ended way and asking people before a change affects them, what their thoughts are on that, that they get to see that they're asked, they feel respected because they're asked before the change was done, and that they feel ownership because ideally we can find some things that they can help inform. Just a few highlights about our organization. We've done a lot of bond work and reimagining culture and strategic planning and lots of boundary and school changes and calendars and start times. Had over 2 million people, mostly parents in education, participate in our software so far, and we're working, like I said, with lots of districts in many different states. And you can see some of our customers here. Let's just jump into a little bit about the solution. So if you're a participant and you get invited into a thought exchange, you get to participate in 3 steps. The first is share, where you get a chance to just answer a few open-ended questions, maybe as 1 or as many as 3, and share your thoughts. Give a chance for you to tell us what's important. Once you participate in the share step, you then get to go through a series of thoughts of other people and play stars beside them. Just kind of like you would in an Uber, an Uber driver, or rate it out of 5 stars. And then in Discover, we can look at the results. You can see a top thoughts report of the participant, and then all of our back-end analysis comes out of the Discover step. So like I said, I'm just going to go through the steps here so you can see what they look like. So we invite people by email or a link, either through a text message or like an SMS or just in your social channels. They click the link, it loads in any browser. As you can see here, it's designed to be work on a phone. We're finding more and more people are participating on their mobile platform, so we've designed this to be mobile first. We give them a little bit of background, what the questions are going to be, maybe some attached documentation or a video to share coming from but why their participation is really important, and then how their information will be used. We ask a few demographic questions so we can understand a little bit about the person who's participating and where their school they're in, and what kind of person they are. And then we use that information later on. In the share step here, you can see that people answered open-ended questions by putting their thoughts in and then adding in some detail before. So we ask people to separate out their thoughts and then share for them why that's important. That helps get that underlying interest of the participant. Part of the service that we provide, along with the support to deliver all the major engagements that you take on, is moderation. So we'll actually have our team read through all of the thoughts and make sure nothing is said that's rude or hurtful or will take away from the exchange. And that just happens on the fly real time. Then you get to go through a series of thoughts, like I said, of other people. You see the thought, you rate it out of 5 stars, and you go through. Ideally, we get people to go through about 30 thoughts. So not everybody's going to see every single thought. But what we do is we make sure that each thought is seen the same number of times across the exchange, and we also make sure that people are seeing diverse thoughts. So they're not all the same types of thoughts, and we use that information in our analysis as well. As we move into Discover, we can look on the left, you'll see the top thoughts report. So these are the thoughts that rise to the top based on the number of stars they get. We can see, is it a polarizing thought? Do some people love it and some people don't? Or is it generally supported by the people who see it? You then take all of the thousands of thoughts that you'll gather and we put those in interactive bar charts for you, so we theme them and add some sub-themes as well. And you can click on those themes and see where the sort of greatest places of conversation are, what the kinds of things that people are focused on. We can take that information and take those themes and look at them by demographics or by site location. And what's important, I'm sure you will have seen heat maps and bar charts before, but for us what's really interesting is how do you get down to the thought level. So we can look at the themes, look at the sub-themes, look at the demographics, and then look for those top thoughts, those unique ideas that are surfaced. One other just brief piece of analysis is the idea of common and special interest groups. So how do you, in an exchange, what we're able to do is we're able to look at particular ideas or particular thoughts. We're able to see where those, maybe those are a polarizing idea. Are there different groups of people that organize differently around those? And then regardless of if you support or not a certain initiative, are there some things that group agree on? So regardless of if you gave a thought, say 5 stars or 1 star, is there some common interest, some thoughts that both of those groups agree? And then that becomes really important as you're sort of rolling out your decision and navigating through your change. In a way, by saying, you know, what we've learned is maybe not everyone is supportive of this initiative right away, but here's some things that we've learned from the group that we can do to help make this initiative successful or help with the implementation of this initiative. To help with there, we also look at the kinds of exchanges that you're doing, and we can train and support some of your staff to learn how to use the tool with small groups. And we also then have our Advanced Unlimited service, which is mostly the service that people use when they're talking about some of the larger initiatives that you're considering here. And then the last step after that is just to look at your first engagement, which would be in spring of 2018. I'm going to pause there. I know I went through that really fast. I want to give you all sort of a general overview, and then we can come back with questions. Come back to me with questions, and I can reiterate some of the points I made here. So I'll just open it up to the floor there.
In view of what happened to Facebook last week, the data you collect, who owns that, and what do you do with it, and can anybody else have access to it?
Can somebody just go a bit closer to the mic there, just repeat that question?
Okay, just a second.
Yeah, please, I can hear you great.
Sorry. I'm going to repeat the question.
My question was, in view of what happened to Facebook in the recent week, I guess, who owns the data that you collect from our citizens, and what do you do with it, and can anybody else access it? Do you sell it to other people, or I would assume not, but can you explain how you safeguard our data?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, absolutely. It's an issue that surfaced quite recently about that. So the shortest answers I can give you is your data is owned by you as the district. We work with your data on your behalf, but only on your behalf and under your specific request. And so in that way, we sort of work like a warrior on your behalf. And so the data is owned by you. It's stored on our system, and you can access it when you need. And we would only share that with you, your information. If you choose at some point to not continue to work with us, then we would export that data and give it to you, and then delete it. We store it for 6 months, but then we would delete it off our system. So just to recap there, it's your data, it's owned by you, it's stored on our server in the US, and you maintain rights to that data through and after the end of our working relationship.
Thank you.
Claire?
I have a question, but you'll let you ask it. That's right. Thank you. How do you invite people to be part of the thought exchange, or what do you operate on a list? I guess that's the question. How do people get into the system to share their thoughts?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the main way that people participate is by clicking a link. So that link can be embedded in an email address, and if we have email addresses for all your parents, then we can create a unique link for each individual, and they click, and then we know that they have participated. Now we're careful. We tell people that we're sharing their thoughts and the results of how they star things, so we can see that we let them know we're going to share that information. But what we do not share is their names. You can't connect the participant to what they said. Just a little piece of housekeeping there. But yeah, so that link, like I said, so that if we don't have their email address, then we can send them that link in an open email. We can also post that link on a website, or sometimes even in a newspaper or online community paper. And so that, and then also we're just releasing right now an SMS feature where people can text, how they text star and a series of numbers, to a server, and then we would send them the thought exchange questions. They would participate that way.
Can you monitor the responses so one person can provide one response? Or can people try to get on in different ways and have multiple responses?
Yeah, great point. So what we do is we allow people to put in as many thoughts as they want, and we also allow people to come back and place stars on more thoughts if they like. Once a thought has been seen or moderated by our group, it can't be changed, but people can come back in and add more thoughts, and they can put more stars on things. And so in a survey, that would tend to sway the results because you end up looking at more at frequency than sort of what resonates based on the ideas and how people see them. So in a survey, because it's based on frequency, the number, meaning the more times you hear something, sort of the more important that it is. Our system isn't like that. Our system is about the more stars that something gets, the higher up it rates. And people would only get to see one thought one time. So they can't go back and sort of place more stars on one thought. They only get 5 stars. They can put 5 on it. They can come back and make that, instead of a 5, put 3 on it. But they can't game the system by putting more and more stars on the same thought. What they could do is they could put stars, rate thoughts highly, the same types of thoughts. If they see similar thoughts, they can give more stars. What that just tells us is that they're really serious about their position around those types of thoughts. And so it doesn't sway the overall result. It just shows us that here's a group of people that star in a particular way, and they seem very passionate about it. And so we're able to use that information again in our communication at the end of the exchange to say, wow, what we've learned here is that there's groups of people in our community that feel strongly, some people feel really strongly about these issues, other people feel sort of less strongly, and that's been really helpful to know, and thank you for sharing how strongly you feel about that particular issue.
Thank you.
Is that helpful?
Yes.
Can I ask a question? What's scored? Sir, question for you in your contract that I'm reading here, where it says standard exchanges, single question, up to 150 participants. What does that limit us to only 150 people responding, or what does that mean?
That's great. So let's just separate, make the distinction here, we'll separate the sort of the advanced services from the standard. So in advanced services, it's multiple questions and as many people as you want, and that's all of the bigger projects. So in standard, why we put a limitation is because it's not a software limitation. You could invite more people, but the thing is that you want people to be able to interact with enough thoughts that it makes the data really rich. So meaning that in our advanced exchanges, we break things down by school and we put people in different exchanges and then we aggregate data and we learn a lot that way. And in the standard, because it's sort of a one-time thought, one question exchange, if you have too many people in it, they don't get to see enough thoughts. So, meaning if you had 1,000 people with 3,000 thoughts, there's just no way that people could see that many thoughts. So on the standard side of things, we limit it so that there might be a couple of 100 thoughts in an exchange, about 100 people, maybe 2 thoughts each, maybe less. And maybe people won't go through all of the thoughts, but they will go through a larger chunk of them, and that makes for better data in those exchanges, in those small exchanges. So the standard exchanges, what they're designed for is, principals having conversations with their staff, or smaller conversations, or maybe you're getting ready to have a leadership meeting and you want to make sure that people are given an opportunity to let you know what they want to be talking about, or setting agendas, or you're bringing principals together to talk about some professional learning, or maybe a change in a certain policy, and then you want to go out to those principals after and say, what are some perspectives that we should be considering while we change this, or what were some of the key takeaways you took from our session today, or again, what are some of your thoughts on a particular issue? So again, just to recap, they're designed for smaller, not a hard limit to answer your question, but size of the group related to the number of thoughts and the type of use.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. I see this is in English, French, and Spanish. I'm not so sure that French is a big area for us, but how close are you to having this in Somali?
That's a great question. So, we're pretty close. I don't want to give you a specific date because it's all connected to our SMS feature, and that's just getting tested now with some pilot groups. And but once that is sort of released for public use by our customers, then we'll be there on the language piece. So I would say if you pin me down on the time, I would say within the sort of the next 4 months, we'll be there on the language piece. But, and a little bit more on that. So the thing that's important about the SMS feature is that it looks at what language people are using on their phone. And so then it translates the thoughts for the languages. So if I'm asking the question in English and you're participating in Somali, you'll participate in your language, and then it will translate, and I will see your thoughts in English, and you would see if I put in thoughts, you would see them in Somali.
Is there anything that you'll, right, I understand you're maybe not the guy writing this or whatever, but is there any guarantees that your company would make that we would have that in Somali in the next 4 to 6 months?
That's a good question. I'm not something I can answer right now, but offline for sure we can look at how to make that work.
Thank you.
It's not the best answer, but one I can give you now. Any other questions or comments in general?
Todd, who's the head person for our district for this if we go with this? Is it this new communications person?
Yeah, so that's a good segue. I would start with it, and then I would start working with it. And then the idea is that this new communication person would link all these different pieces together and then communicate that, not just the messages that would go on Thought Exchange or the survey that's going to go out that you approved, and also the open enrollment survey, but also communicating all these results to the public.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is, right, we have a lot of data finding going on, and Jason is our star data person on the board, but your data is only as good as how you read it, right? And if you have all this stuff and we don't have somebody reading it correctly, it doesn't give us accurate information.
And also asking it correctly. I think that's very important on the front end. You want to make sure you're asking the right questions. There is one correction on there of the price quote for Thought Exchange. I don't know if you have pulled that up, but it has for the prorated amount from now until the end of June 30th, we'd like to start for the spring. It's actually $8,000. It's not $9,500, so that's a correction. So it's actually $8,000, not $9,500. And then the ongoing cost would be the $20,000 that you see on the bottom there. And it's also 10 Thought Exchange standard. It's supposed to say 10, not 5 Thought Exchange. Those are the same. So don't worry about the licensing. That's all the same.
All right. Is there any further discussion? The item of communication plan has been moved and seconded. At this,
the price for that person, communication, what?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Thanks for asking that. The whole package would be, we don't know who this person is yet. I'm just getting permission to move forward with it, but we're estimating that the whole package would be about $75,000 when you include everything together. If we share this person, we're figuring, when Nicole and I looked at it, anywhere between 80, around, with benefits, 80 to 85,000. But if we can get Northfield to split those costs, that would make it between 40 and 45. So there's no guarantees yet. We would probably stick with a part-time person if we did move forward. That we probably wouldn't do a full-time person anyways. But obviously if we can get a full-time person, we may be able to get better candidates for that position. So right now you're just giving me permission to pursue a communication person with the idea that we're going to stick right around that $40,000, $45,000 range for that person.
Is this year after year, or is this?
Yeah, yes, it would be a contract year after year, and you get a chance to approve that each year.
I'd like to apologize for missing the work session where you may have discussed this item. Why now? What's the just or rationale for approving this now?
I think right now, let me try to give you, feel free to chime in, any of the board members. I think we're going through a phase right now where we need to do a better job communicating to the public all the good things that are happening within our school. And we have to do a better job of making sure that we're communicating with the public to figure out what the community's priorities are for the school district in order to receive that support. So by getting all this data, rather than over the last 3 or 4 years we've been trying to guess what this community is looking for, we feel, and along with the cabinet too and other folks, that we really need to know what that information is out in the public before we can start actually addressing our whatever it is. We've talked about doing a strategic plan and revamping that. Rather than the board giving us 3 goals, maybe we should look for the community to see what they have as their priorities for our school district. We just heard from 2 great people in our community about the issues that we're having with the iPads. We need to know that information. So if there's a huge issue that's out there, then we want to know what those things are instead of guessing.
When would you anticipate us having this data to work with?
Okay, there's 3 separate pieces here. The communication person would be employed throughout the year, starting July 1st. This is kind of in 2 pieces. The thought exchange is just for this first part, and then we do a whole year with that, and the Guide K-12 would basically start now prorated, and then we have that also for the next year. So the first section of it, you could have data as early as June or July. We want to get going on that first part of it. And the exchanges we've talked about, and they can certainly, the exchange is kind of the questions that we're asking the community surround 3 different topics right now. And the first topic is 7-period day or different scheduling at the high school. Does this community really want a 7-period day, or are we just talking about it like we're the only ones that want it? How do we get that information from the community to see if that's a high priority for our community at our high school? And is that the reason why students are leaving our school district? Are they not getting the opportunities given to them that other school districts are giving to those students? Open enrollment is another, it's a separate piece, but it also ties into this. Why are these students leaving our school district? To me, you have 450 students that are leaving our school district to go to Northfield or Medford or Owatonna or whatever those are. That to me says that, hey, there's something going on here, and I can talk to the parents, but the parents aren't giving me the answers. Maybe this will help out with that. So there's data that can be pulled starting this year, and depending on what those exchanges are and how we arrange those questions with you guys, that's when the data will be retrieved.
Would this or could this result in programming changes as early as next fall?
Probably not. I would say that we're, because especially I'm just speaking for the high school now, and actually the middle school too, because their schedules are pretty set next fall. It doesn't mean that we can't address the technology and what we can do. I think both Gina and Kim made some great points about being purposeful for technology. I can't remember which one of the students made the comment, but trying to figure out how you can turn that to ownership and being proud of having that iPad and making sure that I'm going to be responsible for that iPad rather than just handing out iPads. So things like that we could take a look at and then have ready by next fall. But systematic changes probably, I don't think that can happen until at least December of 2018.
Well, my review of the materials, and it seems sensible in so many ways. The one hesitation that I have is in the personnel, in that we haven't established a clear budget for next year. We are putting on non-renewal resolution coming up. I've been looking at the budget adjustments, which seem to be going in the right direction in my opinion, but maybe I'm misinterpreting that. In any case, I'm concerned about approving a position without knowing what we might be giving up in its because of that approval now, when we're going to be looking at teaching staff, support staff, paraprofessionals, and so on as we fine-tune the budget, which is an ongoing process for the next several months at least. So that's my only hesitation. I agree with the notions of collecting this information. I think the process seems to be, at least has the potential for giving us some good information, but I am hesitant to approve a position without knowing all the other specifics that we'll be looking at in coming weeks.
Todd, is there any concern with sharing this person with Northfield in that we're in competition with some of our students going there type of thing? I just asked that question. I know Owatonna, I'm not looking to spend more money, but I know Owatonna hired a full-time person for their district just for this, for the communications piece of it and whatnot. And I maybe we're not, maybe it's not an issue. I just asked that question of, they split time 50-50. I don't know.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I never thought of that. It's a good point, and you know, that's a good question. We collaborate as superintendents. Maybe we don't think that deeply because we all think that we're buddies, and we exchange things and share programs wherever we can so that we can minimize cost. But I mean, I think our cabinet would be more than happy to do a full-time communications person, or if the board would rather have us look at an independent half-time person, we'd be more than happy to do that too. So either way is fine with us. Yeah, but that's a piece I never thought of, Jeff.
I believe Superintendent Seskers asked for approval to look into hiring a communications person, and we will get the opportunity to approve or disapprove that actual position when it comes back to us. I'm a big believer in communication. We have approximately 4,000 individuals that go home every day after school and communicate what's happening at school. But we don't have any idea in most cases what that communication is. So to hear the official viewpoint from the school about things, and I'm not talking about individual 4,000 students every day, but the whole key, I think, is for us to get the ability to push information out, which I don't see us doing a lot of as opposed to pulling it. We establish a lot of ways for parents and community members to pull information from the district. So follow us on this site and check in here and check in there and check your students' daily activities through one of the programs. But we don't have a regular push of information out to parents that help communicate what we view is happening every day. So I support all these. Communication and interpersonal skills are the key for any school employee, and certainly for a district, communication and treating people correctly also will go a long way. Any further discussion?
With this, we are spending taxpayers' money, or we're about to, or at least for you to check into. I always assumed that the top communication person in the district is you, the superintendent, and to hire somebody, we're not in Minneapolis or St. Paul, thousands and tens of thousands of kids. And with Mr. Casper, we have to look at our budget. And I think there's some limitations, like I said, with languages, and it may be too early to do it, even though I'm not really in favor of all this. Are we going to be wise in spending taxpayers' money? Right now, I don't think it is. I think that, like I said, I've always thought communication that's your job, Todd. Maybe you want it, maybe you don't, but that's, you're the spokesperson along with whoever sits in this chair. And instead of hiring outside, it looks like we're expanding your cabinet. And I don't want to get into that discussion.
Well, I appreciate that. And I would still be the spokesperson for the school district. I mean, that would be the bottom line. We look at this as an additional advantage for the entire school district. I think we've come to a crossroads right now in this school district. We've done some really, really great things. But you've heard there are some issues at the middle school. You've heard maybe some other issues that might be out there that may or may not be true. And we can go out there and let people know that some of these things and what the facts are in a lot of these different things. But having a professional do that rather than having me do that, I think makes more sense. And it's just another tool for the school district to use. I would say that's how I look at it, but I would still certainly be the spokesperson for the school district to do that.
And in my opinion, we had a couple ladies up here speaking. And of course, in my opinion, they're above the school board. And they've spoken, they said there's a problem at the middle school, which I'm not blaming Mike or nothing, that's not naming names at all. But again, there's always been problems at the middle school. And you know, what are we gonna do? But now we've had, which is very rare, that parents would come up here and, you know, speak this. This is really rare. So, to me, it's already been communicated. Our spokespeople already spoke to us. And then, you know, what are we gonna do about that? And we don't need an outside person, maybe doesn't even live in the district. No, I just, to me, it's you know, it's a waste of time and money at this point.
Mr. Chair, and again, I would just reiterate, we're not approving a position tonight, but I think the thought exchange, I think your point is well taken, Richard, that of all the times I've been on the school board, I mean, there's a very small number of people that have come to speak to us. And I don't know if it's just an example of the way people communicate today, that there is more thought exchange being done in these ways out in the community, and this is the way people are trying to communicate their thoughts through some type of program or what we're looking at tonight. So I agree with you. People coming to speak with us is great. I appreciate it, and I, you know, really listen to what they have to say, but I would like more information, more thoughts exchanged, and maybe this type of program is the way people are more comfortable doing it now, and that's how they're communicating with the school board.
When I joined the school board almost 10 years ago now, one of the first things I thought we should do is hire somebody for the communications. So I think the first thing I'll say is I've been wishing we had done it for the last 10 years, so I'm still on board with that idea. I think you'd be really hard-pressed to find any organization the size of our school district, in the private sector for sure, that doesn't have somebody whose job it is to focus on communications. And I think the public sector has that exact same challenges of making sure, and when we say communication, I mean that in both directions. It shouldn't take parents coming to a board meeting for us to know that there's a concern about iPads. It shouldn't be that hard for folks to learn about it. And while Todd may always be our chief spokesperson, there are a million things on a day-to-day basis that go into communication. It's making sure our websites are out there. It's making sure the mailers that go out are correct, and that they look well and that they're consistent for the district, and they're always giving the consistent message. And that is a big job. A lot of the day-to-day tasks of that are enormous. And while Todd should always be at the top of the list and the forefront of that, somebody handling that, somebody who is a professional and knows how to handle that job on a day-to-day basis, to my mind, has been something that we have always needed. I am excited to see that we're looking at it. To me, the only question, and I think Chad brought this up in exactly the right way, is whether or not this is a shared position or if it's a position that we hire full-time for ourselves. I think other districts would be doing that. I like the idea of a shared position with Northfield if that feels like it's appropriate. But I would be hesitant to hire somebody part-time with the worry that we wouldn't get the same candidate pool, because I would want a very strong person with really good skills in that position. Yeah, I'm completely on board with hiring a communications person. My questions would be, and I think I'm in favor of these, and would be happy to approve them tonight. But the tools that we're adding on to that, I wonder whether or not we should wait for a communications person to decide what tools they should have at their disposal to do the communications. And so I'm worrying a little bit about as we were talking here, the horse and the cart. We're looking at spending some significant amounts on some tools for communications, and yet we have not identified the person yet who will be in charge of our communications, and so we're sort of asking them to work with the tool set we've chosen for them, and it seems like perhaps that would be something we'd ask somebody to bring, help us figure out what tool set we might want. So that's my only question at this particular moment, is whether or not there's some horse and cart issues here, and I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Todd, and whether or not we should go forward with those items at the moment. I like them in theory. I just, you know, if we had a communications person, I would want them in front of me telling me whether or not these were the right tools, but we don't have that person yet. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, sort of the order of things there, Todd.
Yeah, and we've thought about that too. We've talked about getting the Guide K-12 and let's just talk about Guide K-12 first, that software. One of the things that the board wanted me to do is to analyze the previous vote results. So, and then we talked about it at cabinet and said, hey, let's just put this communication plan as a total package and bring it to the board, because they all kind of interconnect. So, horse before the cart, cart before the horse. We probably should have approved the Guide K-12 thing a couple months ago. And then we've been going back and forth having discussions about a communications person. And we really hadn't made that decision until we started exploring what Thought Exchange is. And Thought Exchange we've now looked at for the last couple months. And then we brought in Barb Nickel, who is one of the more renowned PR people in the state, and she's helped a lot of people. She's part of MINSPRA, which is kind of like MASA or MSBA. It's an organization that supports all these different people who work in public relations that help not just private sector, but also public schools. So all these kind of came together at one time. I do agree with you. It does make sense to have that person involved in that piece. But talking to Barb Nickel, who I consider kind of the guru of the PR folks, it's going to take a while for these, and to get Maria to help us put the software in place. They would use this software, we already know that, in order to reach to the public. So it's kind of a combination doing everything together, and then we're going to be, if that communication person is approved, and I'm hoping that we'll get this moving forward, it really, these tools would be the minimum number of tools that this communication person would want to utilize. And they may actually ask for some different things too later on.
So just so that I'm clear on your response there, I think what I'm hearing from you is that we've already talked to some communication professionals, and a lot of the ideas that we're talking about for the technology here came from them as tools that we would want in place for a communications professional.
That's correct.
Thank you. That helps me greatly.
Mm-hmm. One last comment, and I think Mr. Casper said it, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but we're adding, but we're cutting. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense. We're adding and we're cutting. And this person won't be in contact with the children whatsoever. Right?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, all of our
Chances are
staff.
he won't be in a classroom.
You mean like a teacher? Won't be a teacher.
Teacher, paraprofessional, special ed, somebody, helper.
Well, it'd be part of the school district. It depends on if you guys hire him or not. He'd be part of our family, so it'd be continued. We'd consider him a piece of our family, and we'd include him or her on every decision that we make, just like we do with the rest of our administrative staff. So I agree with you that they wouldn't be directly teaching kids, but at the same time, our hope is that it would be an advantage to the school district, not a burden.
And I'd like to speak for myself again. I believe that gathering good data and good information is going to be crucial to decision making. The fact that we are approving the pursuit of this plan and will have an opportunity to approve or disapprove of personnel changes or personnel hiring at a later time allays my fear, because I just didn't want to be put into a situation where we're adding something now without knowing where we're going to be a little bit later. So since there is going to be, if we vote to approve this tonight, what I understand is that we're allowing you to pursue and explore this, and that should any expenditures be found necessary, that will come back to us at a later time.
Yeah, and I really want to be clear on these reductions. These are not cuts. It doesn't make any fiscal responsible superintendent say, I want to have 12 kids in a classroom. It doesn't make any sense. You have to make reductions when you're losing students. We're losing 100 students next year. So that means that we've got staff that we are not necessarily in favor of having in the classroom. We need to make those ratios, between 20 and 22 students to really make it fiscally responsible. So if we were going through budget cuts, then I would probably not bring this. I wouldn't bring this forward. These are responsible reductions that help balance our budget, and we're not hurting kids one bit with any of these different reductions that we're making.
And that's a process that we go through every year.
Every year.
To look at our current situation and make adjustments as needed.
Yep.
Todd, I think it's just simply reallocating your resources, and there's a cruel nature to that at times, but that's the reality of right-sizing your business and what you have to do type of thing. The only thing I would add to this thought exchange, in whether it's you or Maria or whoever deals with it, I'm not the negotiator on this, but obviously this spring of 18 is a bit of a trial period type of thing, because we don't, in theory, then if we do approve this, we don't hire somebody until July 1st or something. I would make sure there's some type of deduction in there if we don't get the Somali language included. I don't think it's right that we pursue something if it's not going to be included. It's simply too big of a population for us to not have active feedback. And you heard him, he thinks 4 months, maybe it's 4 to 6 months. That would be at least the start of next year. We need to have their input. So I would just leave it at that.
Yep, I've got Andy over there. We'll just make that a footnote before we sign the contract.
Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded and discussed, and I will now call for a vote on the approval of the communication plan. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
No.
Motion carried 6-1 with Mr. Olson voting nay. Item F, consider approval of the fiscal year 19 budget adjustments. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
We have put this together, and you saw this at the work session, and other various committees have seen this, and we haven't changed anything. It's consistent to what you have seen in the past. And yeah, any questions that you have, we can certainly bring the appropriate people up to answer those.
Todd, I support this. I know initially I believe you tasked the cabinet, I believe, with about a $420,000 reduction. I know I've spoken with you. I've spoken with Mr. Curry on this. I'll support this. At the same token, if it comes back at some point, a revised number based on middle school needs potentially, and especially based off the comments tonight, once again, we shouldn't necessarily react just based on public comments, but I'm aware of their comments prior. I've spoken with you and Mr. Curry, and so should that number be lowered at some point in the future to address the middle school issues, I would support that as well. So.
I'll just point out that the reduction that we're looking at, which totals $460,000, is approximately 60% of the lost revenue of losing 100 students. And that's why we're making reductions. So we're losing students, we lose revenue, and it's a responsibility of the board to make adjustments.
And I'll add just one comment, and I'm sure, Todd, you'll agree with this statement. A number of these reductions are to particular grades where the class sizes right now are quite small and don't support larger ones. As we know in the past, we've had times where, I had children at Jefferson where at times we ended up with class sizes that were much higher than we anticipated, and we learned that at the beginning of the school year, and we responded to that by adding class sizes. And I'm certain that's the case here, that if these numbers are significantly higher than is projected at this moment, that you know, that will also bring additional revenue and allow us to restore these classrooms if these numbers are not in line with what we're seeing here for the number of students.
Yeah, just so the public knows too, our K2 is still between 18 and 22 kids. Our 3-5 is under either 25 or lower kids. And we have pairs in some of the earlier grades to help out.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion in front of us, excuse me, budget adjustments, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Item G, approval of resolution 18-23 relating to termination and non-renewal of teaching contracts of probationary teachers. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
Todd, one question, and I don't want to go through names on here, but I'm certain that some of these positions, as I look at some of the names that I've seen, some of these are about licensing, that there's some teachers who are on probably a variance right now, and thus we're required to repost their position. Is that a proper way to frame a few of these?
Yep, that's exactly correct.
Do you know roughly how many, and I don't need an exact number and I don't want names again, but roughly how many that might be on this list? At least 8 of those on that list are on that. And so it's quite likely those 8 will be back in the district next year. The reason we're hiring them on variance is because those are difficult positions to fill, and that could absolutely be true for next year as well.
And we have communicated very clearly to those 8 people.
Right, yeah. Thank you.
I'll just point out it is a common and recommended practice by all school boards to terminate each year all probationary teachers. Any further discussion?
Just clarification, we're doing we do that for all people who are on variances or community expert license. We don't necessarily do it for all the probationary teachers. So,
okay.
Just so you know that.
Well, I'll stand by my statement.
Okay.
A lot of districts terminate all probationary teachers.
They do.
Hire them back.
Yep.
But it is a process that most districts go through.
Yep.
So we have probationary teachers that are not on this list that are not being terminated?
That's correct.
Okay. It's very kind of you. All right.
We're not as tough as you guys in Medford and Rosemont.
Hello.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor of resolution, this is a resolution, excuse me. Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Yvette?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Andrea?
Aye.
Myself, aye. John?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, it passes 7-0.
Thank you. We've come to report. We do not have a student representative. School board members, you have items to report.
Yes, is Rob gone?
Yes.
Oh, okay, because he had a seminar on the autism. Were you there?
No, but
okay.
School held it.
But it was at middle school and,
I was there.
Okay, and it was very informative and actually a lot of people. It's actually surprised the speaker. I was there, my wife and my son. To learn a little bit. It was very general. It's only about an hour, well, actually went about an hour, 20 minutes with questions. So it was very good. He did a good job of arranging that.
Yep, it was very good.
That's what I wanted to say.
No one else? I'll just mention that I attended the student walkout on, what was it, 2 weeks ago almost? 14th, okay. And I attended the middle school and heard from Jamie later the same thing, that it went extremely well. from what I viewed anyway. I'm not sure what it looked like getting them all back in the classrooms, but the middle school students, a number of them came out and decided to walk around the building and then entered the building again at the appropriate time, and I was quite pleased with how it looked from an observer outside the building. And nothing political, but I commend the administrations of both buildings for the way that was handled, and actually the students for the way they handled it as well. Mr. Sesker.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for all the principals coming tonight. Really appreciate seeing you guys here. So we've got all 5 of our principals here, and I know the board appreciates seeing you as well. I have started my meetings for the spring. I try to meet one time in the fall with the entire staff at each of the buildings, and I do my follow-up now. I've met at Lincoln, and I'll try to make those schedules. I've already scheduled, I think, most of them to meet with the other staff too. I usually try to bring a cabinet person down too, so if they have questions about any of the other areas, they can certainly ask those questions too. Gives a chance for the staff to talk to me directly and to the cabinet members directly, so they can dispel any rumors that might be out there, or just bring up some different topics that they may want to research. Region C meeting was last week. That was a good meeting. We talked about different legislative priorities. There's a lot of, I would say, proposals that would bring more mandates to us again, of course, and we try to fight that as much as we possibly can. But it is not it's a bonding session, so there's probably not much revenue that's coming our way for that. I did a call-in with Commissioner Casilius to go over the governor's priorities too, and it gave us a good picture of the different dynamics that are setting us up to close the session this time around, and it should be an interesting meeting. And I believe we go, I don't know if John, if you're coming next week, but there is a C has our April 6th, I think it is, for our legislative deal up at the Capitol. And other than that, been working on this communication plan for a while.
Okay, for the community's information, I see 8 committee meetings, one of which has occurred already, just so that you're aware that staff and board members are busy doing lots of things in between meetings. I'll draw your attention to the next meeting of the board, which is a work session on April 9th, and our next regular board meeting is on April 23rd. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.